interesting. I think there are a few people who maybe have malicious intent, but I don't think they're the majority. I think an awful lot of people, like it was in the Soviet Union. You know, I told this story last time I was on your show about my grandmother who was born in a gulag. Her family ended up living in a small town where the only people that lived there were people who were previously in the gulag and the guards who were previously in the gulag as well. You had the guards and the people living together in the same town. And when Stalin died and all the terrible atrocities of his reign were exposed, a lot of these guards in these small towns, where they were confronted with the victims of that system, they shot themselves because they were horrified by what they'd done in the name of an ideology, because they believed it. They thought they were doing the right thing. They thought that by torturing or executing or enslaving these people, they were doing the right thing. This is the biggest problem. The problem isn't evil, malicious people running around who want to make things worse. The problem is people who buy into ideology that gives them permission to do terrible things in the name of the greater good. Those people are the biggest danger to every society. The people who are going to make things a lot worse because they think it's, you know, we just got to break these eggs right here. We just break these eggs and everything. We'll break 50 million of these eggs, and then we are going to have a great omelette. Yeah, forget about the 50 million eggs that we've just put in a camp. That's fine. It's for the greater good. They are the biggest danger, and it's the useful idiots. And I talk right at the end, as you know, in the book about how Stalin got the nuclear bomb. It was Western scientists who were involved in the Manhattan Project that gave it to him. They gave it to him because communism was this beautiful ideology that they believed. They gave the enemy of the West, a man who killed more Russians and Soviet citizens than Hitler. They gave him a nuclear bomb, probably decades ahead of schedule. Decades. The nuclear bomb, the first nuclear bomb the Soviet Union had, was a carbon copy of the one that was dropped on Hiroshima. Or Nagasaki, I think one of those two. Because they gave it to them in the name of ideology. This is the power of bad ideas, Jan. It can make people do terrible things and feel good about it.
So, okay, here's the thought that I have. Very, very interesting. So, I don't know if you've ever read, one of the most interesting books that I've read in recent times is a book called The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Matthias Desmet. COVID has been shocking. The whole reality around COVID, the policy and how people have thought about it in response has been frankly shocking to me and has been the subject of many, again, American thought leaders episodes. One of the things that was shocking is how a whole suite of ostensibly perfectly normal people became ready to aggressively vilify and shut out of society and God knows what else, if it were allowed to continue, the unvaccinated, right? Which, as you were describing the scenario of the Soviet Union, and in the book, I'm thinking about this now. What created that situation with these guards that you described, kind of realizing, oh my God, I've been on the wrong side? So let me connect these things. In the psychology of totalitarianism, we talk about this phenomenon of mass formation, where people start believing deeply that something that is ostensibly crazy, like, for example, supporting the socialist project when you know you have to torture and kill people to do it. People just kind of are in it, almost like a kind of hypnosis. And the only way to break them out is some kind of, and actually Yuri Bezmenov, I believe, if I remember correctly, calls it, you got to kick him in the nuts or something like this. So that's what Khrushchev did when he basically explained to the Soviet Union, because he had the full power of the Soviet press behind him and under his control, the crimes of Stalin over whatever it was, 4 hours or something like this. And that was the kick in the nuts, so to speak, right? So that, anyway, this is fascinating, because it also tells me that there's a way to help people who have been, I guess indoctrinated, for lack of a better term, come out of that. What are your thoughts?
There must be a way. I've never thought about this. This is a really good question, Jan. You know what you've caught me out on is, I think on this issue I've probably been focusing on the problem less on the problem a lot, and I haven't focused enough on what the answer might be, because I don't know how you get people who've so willingly gone along with demonizing people, how you you get them to see what they became during this time. I sort of jokingly said during the course of this COVID, madness, that at least it's the first pandemic where we haven't blamed the Jews, because that's kind of how it felt like. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like we just need the scapegoat, and look, the Jews played that role very well for millennia, and everybody was happy. Now we've got this, except us Jews, obviously, but we've got to a point now where. I don't know how you get these people to see what they became during. I genuinely don't know. I don't know how. I couldn't understand how we had the polling that we had in the UK where people were like, I think we should wear masks forever. It doesn't matter if there's COVID. Just 30% or 40% of society just wear masks forever. What's your problem? Well, there's nothing wrong with wearing a mask. What you want to kill Granny? How you get to? I tried. I tried because everybody's got their own take on the vaccine. I don't have a particular. I'm not a doctor. I don't have an opinion. I'm just on the medical side of things. I have a personal opinion that I use to make decisions for me and my family, but not a public one because I'm not. Sure. It's not what I understand. But on the rights, the civil liberties and rights side of it, I tried. I went to the protest in the UK. I contacted the government ministers. I told them, "What the hell are you doing?" Right? But there weren't that many people who sort of heard what I said. They were, "Why are you freaking out? Why are you freaking out that the government wants to force people to inject something into their body? Like they don't see it." But I don't know. My take on it was, and this is probably crude and rudimentary and an unfair comparison or whatever. I don't know. It's just how I feel. When I think about those people who came together in a place called Nuremberg in 1945 and said, we must never, ever again force people to take medical procedures that they don't want, I think that we're onto something, Jan. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think I'm a weirdo for thinking about that. People will say, oh, yeah, but the Nuremberg Code didn't cover vaccine. I don't know anything. I'm not an expert on it. I'm just saying it as a layman. When I see that people, after one of the greatest horrors in human history, made some decisions that, let's just be extra careful about this thing here because it can be misused by people, even well-meaning people in the future. I think we ought to just take a little bit of a moment of thought before we just ride roughshod over those rail guards that they put in place for society. It's not a trivial thing to force people to put things in their body that they choose not to. It's not a trivial thing. It's a whether if you're a religious person, it's a God-given right. Or if you're just like me, you maybe not someone who follows an organized religion. I consider that a natural right of a human being to control what goes in and out of their body and to make decisions for themselves. We do that every day. We do that on all sorts of things. And we accept that the decisions I make may have a negative influence on you. And the way to decide that is for us to come together and set laws in place that we can all agree on, right? It's not for a group of people to just unilaterally say, well, we're in power now, so we're going to just, this is what we're doing. We're forcing all doctors to take a vaccine. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm a layman. But it seems strange to me that you've got doctors who don't want to take this being forced by people who are not doctors. Does that make sense to you? That we're people who are not medical experts are forcing some medical experts to take a medical procedure. Does that seem normal to you? Because it doesn't to me. And I'm not saying that like the vaccine is dangerous or whatever. I'm genuinely not saying that. I'm just saying I don't understand how we are okay with that part of it. The social control part of it. I don't get that. I don't understand why other people don't get it. I've tried.
Well, so let me ask you another question. Have you ever thought that there might be a connection with the cultural change that we've been seeing in the West and the sudden interest in these policies, which I would definitely agree with you, depart considerably from what was decided at Nuremberg after the war?
I think there is a connection that I've certainly noticed, which is, I don't know whether this is true of the United States. it's not a country that I've spent that much time in to be able to say. But certainly in the UK, we have an attitude that the government is the answer to everything. Whatever the problem is because the government didn't do something, right? And so if you've got a problem, well, the problem is the government didn't do something. It's not that there's a global pandemic that may kill people. Whatever the government does, if there's a pandemic, people are going to die. But we don't accept that anymore. We believe that if there's a problem, that means the government messed up. And we need more government to come in and deal with the problem. So if we continue to believe that, then whatever the problem is, the answer will be more government. And it strikes me that that is kind of the direction that we're heading in. And again, it's probably due partly to technology. We are much more confident in our ability to solve problems because we can solve more and more problems. And so any problem that comes up, we're like, well, you know, this has to be solvable. Whereas where I resonate with elements of conservative ways of looking at things, it's that we accept that we're not going to be able to solve every problem. Like we talked about at the beginning of the interview, if we can't solve the problem of people murdering each other, then there's probably other problems that we can't solve entirely. And when there's a global pandemic on, while it's obviously terrible and tragic that it will take people's lives, and genuinely I mean that, at the same time, I think if we're naive enough to think that if only we'd done all the right things, nobody would have died, we may find ourselves doing things that go too far. And I think that's kind of where we've ended up.
Well, and